Have you ever wanted to publish your own Shadowdark supplement, but just didn't know where to start? Well, you should stay tuned because I think I have just the thing for you. Hey folks, I'm William. This is Runeforged. Welcome to the channel. I spent the last week hard at work on 2 brand new resources to help aspiring Shadowdark creators publish their first supplement. That first resource is a guide on how to publish for Shadowdark, and the second is a Google Docs template for Shadowdark. Together, these 2 resources should make publishing your very first Shadowdark supplement easier than ever. And best of all, you can get both of these supplements for free. Technically pay what you want using the links down in the video description. But if you'd like to see more, stay tuned, and I will do a quick flip through for both of those resources. But if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider aiding me in my eternal struggle against the dreaded YouTube algorithm by crushing those like and subscribe buttons so you don't miss out on more exciting Shadowdark content like this in the future. Also, please consider checking out my other published stuff for Shadowdark, especially Shadows of Camelot, which is my new post-Arthurian campaign setting, which is designed to take characters from level 1 to 10. And as always, links to go check that out for yourself will be available down in the video description. All right, so as you can see, I've now got my how to publish for Shadowdark guide up on the screen now. We start off with the table of contents here that lists all of the contents for the book. And when we're not in presentation mode, you can jump directly to whatever section that you want to go to. Next, I've got a brief section here on setting expectations, which covers why this guide exists. It says, to help you get over the hump and publish your very first Shadowdark supplement, hopefully without breaking the bank. And then I go into a little bit of detail about some of my publishing credentials. Honestly, not super impressive stuff, but I have published a couple things and they've done fairly well. This next page is kind of the result of some research that I did in the Shadowdark Discord and Facebook. Basically, I made some posts asking aspiring Shadowdark creators what's been holding them back from publishing their very first thing. And these were some of the most common answers that I received when I asked that question. And then I also included some responses to how to mitigate some of those various different concerns. Next, I provide a relatively concise overview of the process for creating and publishing your very first supplement. And then on the following pages, there's more of a breakdown for each one of the process steps. So we've got a little bit of information about how to join in with the community, which I do think is really important to the overall success of your supplement. The truth is that it can be really difficult to advertise, especially if you don't already have an existing platform. And I think that in general, just being an active participant in the community and being friendly and helpful, is a really great way to, one, just make the community a better place overall, and also get some additional eyes on your work when it does come time for you to publish. Next, I got a little bit of advice on how to appropriately scope your project. So this is basically just going to be a series of questions that you need to answer before you are ready to really get started on your project. And because I know a lot of this stuff can be pretty overwhelming for new folks, I also went ahead and made some recommendations for what I think is the best course of action if you are just getting started doing this for the first time. And I answer some really common questions about what platform should you publish your thing on? What layout program should you use? I give recommendations for some various different layout templates that you can use as well, which ties into my brand new Google Docs template for Shadowdark, which we'll talk about more in just a little bit. But there are also some other options that you can use as well. I also talk a little bit about how to design or source commercially usable maps and art for your supplement. And I give a variety of resources that either I have used personally or other people in the community have found to be very useful. And finally, I also include a link to my Canva cover template. And this is basically just like a very hopefully easy to use template for Canva that will help you design the cover or product thumbnail for your supplement. And I just want to point out that there is a free version of Canva, and I'm 99% sure that you should be able to use all of the basic functionality with this template with just the free version. Next, I've got a little bit of advice on how to effectively outline your project, which I think is a really important component in the overall success of your supplement. And if nothing else, I think it'll just make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to the next step, which is writing your first draft. And I've got some additional advice on that here on this page as well. Then I've also got some advice on how to price your supplement. Until you get your feet wet in this space, I do recommend that you publish your stuff as pay what you want. But once you start getting some positive feedback or start to establish a little bit of an audience, then you can either look at what other creators are charging for their work, like in a similar supplements and page counts, Or if you'd really like to, you can reference my sales price matrix, which should give you a general idea of how to price your supplements based on the page count and whether it's going to be a PDF, a soft cover, or hardcover. And I did give these values as ranges. And I've also given some additional information here at the bottom about what might affect whether you're towards the bottom of the range or towards the top. Now, you definitely shouldn't take this pricing matrix as gospel, and it's probably likely to go out of date over the next couple of years as prices probably continue to rise. But hopefully it will act as a pretty good baseline for you if you're just completely lost on how you should be pricing your supplement. Then I've got a little bit of information about how to effectively publish your project to your publishing platform of choice. And I also really wanted to emphasize that I think it can be very tempting for creators to spend all of their energy in creating the very cool thing that they want to make. And they end up kind of completely ignoring the equally important step of making sure that you are presenting your product in the best possible light. And that means that you are going to want to spend some time working on your product page. Because as I mentioned here, it doesn't really matter how good your supplement is if no one ever wants to read it because your product page is either lacking in detail or just completely unappealing. And I give some advice here to give you the best possible chance of having a successful launch, which leads very nicely into the section on promoting your project. And I walk you through some of the various different places and methods that I've used to promote my stuff in the past. And I've even gone so far as to include a simple email template that you are more than welcome to co-opt for your own use. Now, I do know that a lot of people have expressed that they aren't a big fan of promoting their own stuff. And I totally understand where that is coming from. But if you do want people to engage with your work, the unfortunate reality is that you are going to have to drive eyeballs onto your own stuff. And you can't just sit back and wait for other people to engage with your stuff on its own merit. So you really have to do a good job of getting the word out there about your thing. And hopefully with the advice in this promote your project section, that will make that process a little bit less painful than it otherwise would have been. Next, I've also got a section on how you should go about managing your project after you have successfully published and promoted it. So with any luck, you'll have several folks engaging with your work. And you do want to be mindful about how you are engaging with those folks, as they give you feedback on your work. And again, I've got a couple of tips for how you can effectively manage that situation here in this document. And then finally, after you've done all those other steps, now is the time to celebrate your success. While it may not feel like a big deal, I think that you should absolutely take some time to celebrate the various different important milestones in your publishing journey. So, things like publishing your first supplement's a big deal, getting your first download, your first piece of positive feedback, making your first actual sale. If you're doing pay what you want, the first time someone actually spends money on your product, a very good feeling. And then obviously making your first dollar of profit if you had some expenses in putting your supplement together. And I do encourage you to come by the Runeforged Discord and share your success stories, both with me and the rest of the creators that like to hang out in that Discord. And you're also welcome to share your trials and tribulations as well. I think it really does help create a sense of community. And I think it just helps people continue to keep working on their stuff, even if they're not seeing immediate success. And then there's a short section here on what you can do next if you'd like to continue publishing more supplements in the future. And then finally, I do have a couple pages in the back that are addressing some concerns that people have about legal questions and about the use of generative AI in their work. And I do just want to point out that, I am not a lawyer. I don't want you to interpret this as legal advice. And then on the AI side, I'm not really here to litigate the legality or morality of the use of AI. I'm just giving my observations and some recommendations that I have based on what I've seen on these various different topics. So again, I'm not an expert, but hopefully you'll still be able to get some value out of the various different insights and recommendations that I have on these topics. So yeah, that is the flip through of how to publish for Shadowdark. And hopefully you found that flip through to be useful. All right, next let's do a quick flip through of my new Google Docs template for Shadowdark. And I did just want to point out that this one works a little bit differently than the other one. What you are actually going to be downloading from the drive-through page isn't actually the template itself, but it is a PDF that includes a link to the template, as well as instructions for how to use the template and a quick license for how to appropriately use that work. And you can see a copy of that PDF on the screen now. As you can see, I've tried to make this as clear and concise as possible. So hopefully there is minimal confusion. So right here, you will see the link to actually open up the Google Doc template, which we'll do in just a minute. There's also a link to open up the Canva cover template. It should get you started on the process for designing a decent looking cover. It's not going to be amazing if you use a template, but it's going to be a good place to start. And you can always make changes to that template and make it as fancy as you want. And if you're willing to spend a couple extra bucks to upgrade to Canva Premium, there are a lot of like cool backgrounds and textures that you can apply on top of the template to make it look a little bit more professional. But again, if you don't want to get that complicated, or if you don't have the money to spend, hopefully the free Canva template that I provide will be a good starting point. Next, you see there's some instructions for use of the Google Docs template. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, you're going to click the link. It's going to prompt you to make a copy, which we'll go over in just a minute. You're going to go through and remove any of the non-relevant pages or sections in the template, because there's like a lot of different sections in there that you may not need all of them. Then you're going to go through and replace all of the placeholder text and images with your own stuff. And then also make any other additional changes that you want to make to the template. And then when you've done making all of your changes, you're going to go ahead and use the automatically updating table of contents. You basically just have to click on the table of contents, click the update button, and it should automatically populate all of your new sections, assuming that you are using the built-in header system that's included with the document. Then when you're done, you're just going to go to up to File, you're going to click Download, and then you're going to export it as a PDF. So hopefully a pretty simple and straightforward process. But if you do have any issues, you are welcome to reach out to me at my email address, which is included here. Or what might get you a faster response if you come to the Runeforged Discord server. Hopefully somebody will be able to answer your question. And of course, there is also a license for using this template. I tried to make this as clear as possible. I wrote it out in as plain English as I possibly could. But again, if you have any questions or issues with the license, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. First, I'm going to show you the Canva template. So if you click the link here, it will take you to the Canva template. You're just going to go to Edit Template here, and then you can mess around here in Canva and do all the cool Canva things. I've included a front cover, a back cover, which you probably don't need if you're just doing a digital product. I've included some alternate styles with a little bit more texture if you like those. And then I've also provided an example that you can use to kind of get yourself started. All right, so going back to the PDF here, let's go ahead and open up the Google Docs template. When you are prompted, you are going to want to make a copy. And then when this opens, it's going to open up basically your own version of the template. And you are free to edit this however you need to, and it will not impact the original template. All right, I'm just going to scroll through this pretty briefly, but this is basically the template that you can work in. It's got a lot of the compliance related stuff already built in, but definitely make sure that you are following the third-party Shadowdark license. There's a link over in the other document that we looked at earlier, and also make sure that you're following the license for any other artwork or anything else that you might be using for your project. Here is the credits and legal page. I've tried to give you a pretty reasonable template for how to set that out. Basically, you just need to go through and replace some of the placeholder text. Again, we've got our table of contents here. Again, there are instructions for how to update this in that original PDF. And the key to getting the table of contents to working correctly is to use the built-in text types that you can see right over here on this page. So basically, anything that is marked heading 1 should pop up in the table of contents. And then you can also do some additional, you can change the settings here to get it, to customize it to be a little bit more like what you want. But for right now, the only things that are going to show up are the texts that are done in the style of header 1. Again, it may sound a little bit complicated the first time you're using it, but I promise after the first time that you use it, you'll probably have no problem navigating the template. So there's some public domain art in here, just use kind of as placeholders and a way to fill space. There's an introduction section here. Basically, for each one of these various different sections, I include like a brief overview of what I would recommend that you put in that section. And then I will generally also include an example from one of my pieces of published work. All right, going down, here's a little bit of information on if you are creating a setting in this document. This will give you a little bit of information and an example for how to do that. Also a section here for you to put your regional hex map. Also a section here for a random encounter table in the same style that I use for my Shadows of Camelot supplement. There's a template here for giving some additional information about the various different points of interest on your hex key, which are basically just more in-depth descriptions of the various different points of interest on your hex map. And again, I include some examples from Shadows of Camelot. Next, there's also a section for your bestiary, which is where you're going to put the stats for the various different monsters and NPC that are relevant to your supplement. As you can see, there are placeholder creatures in here right now, including both the title page version of this, as well as a full page version, if you're going to have multiple pages worth of monsters, which I imagine that you will. Next, there is a very similar section for magical items, and also a template that you can use to create new Shadowdark classes. I don't think that I have an example in here for this one, but hopefully it is pretty straightforward. Next, we've got a section for you to outline all of the new weapons that you want to include in your supplement, if any. And there's also a section for spell lists that are tied to new classes that you might want to include, as well as a section for detailing those individual spells. Next, we've got a kind of a template here for an adventure that you might want to create for your supplement. So we've got your title page here, an overview, background, miscellaneous information, a place for your dungeon map if you want to include it, and then a breakdown of kind of the high level information about the dungeon. This is very much set up in the classic Shadowdark style, but hopefully it will be familiar to anyone watching this. Next, there is a template for how you can lay out your various different adventure or dungeon locations, as well as some examples that are pulled from my upcoming Wicked Witch of the Woods dark fairy tale themed one-shot, which would be pretty good to play for Halloween. Definitely stay tuned for more information on that, which should be coming out in the near future. All right, and then just more examples here for the various different adventure locations. Basically, I wanted to show you, like a half-page version. I wanted to show you what a larger area might look like. This is a full-page version. And then here's a version with some stat blocks that are built in directly to the location, because I'm a big fan of having all the relevant stat blocks for creatures and also for magical items printed directly on the page along with the location to prevent having to flip back and forth throughout the book. And that, along with my new guide for how to publish for Shadowdark, are the new resources that I have created to help aspiring Shadowdark creators publish their very first supplement. And as a reminder, if you would like to pick up copies of those for yourself, there will be links to do so down in the video description. If you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out the playlist, which should be popping up on your screen very soon, which details the process that I went through to design my very first Shadowdark supplement against the Cult of the Crimson Hand, which conveniently enough is also available pay what you want on DriveThruRPG. And again, there will be a link to check that out down in the video description. But I think that's about it for now. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye.